heard you say you're drawing up a list of people to novel, the energy companies. Could you add the accountancy companies to the list? The chairman of the select committee said that they're carrying, feeding on the dead bodies of Carillion, etc., etc. You know the four names. The co-op give them a lot of money as well. PwC, KPMG, and there's two others. They are nasty companies and they have a complete monopoly.
Thanks, Rebecca. Nigel Todd from Cooperative College. I was just reflecting while you were speaking on personal experience of living in a housing co-op and working in cooperatives, and memories of the state support for cooperatives in the 1970s. And it struck me that the issue of sustainability of cooperatives is central to all of that, in that it's not too difficult, inverted commas, to respond to the first flush of enthusiasm to move into a cooperative. But living and working in a co-op is very different from conventional working and living experience. And how you sustain that? Well, there's a wealth of experience of how to do it, and also sadly how not to do it within the cooperative movement that perhaps needs, could be drawn on. But the underlying factor for me, it goes right back to Rochdale Pioneers. It's the importance of cooperative education. It's really, I guess, just a warning from history that you have to think of the second and third generation of the cooperative members in the co-op, and how you keep the consciousness alive with them, because they won't be part of the genesis.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul Bell from Trade Union Unison. I'm also a Labour councillor and member of the Mid-Counties Cooperative and the Co-op Party. One of the things that our members, and which we've been feeding into your reviews, we want to make sure is very clear, is that from a public sector point of view, we don't want cooperatives, mutuals or social enterprises, because in-house is already cooperation, because it's already owned by all of us. So when you fragment it into a cooperative, social enterprise or mutual, it goes out into the private sector. And part of the EU procurement regulations, 2014 or 15, depending where you are in the country, stated was that you could create outsourcing to a social enterprise, mutual or cooperative for up to 3 years, and it can be picked up by the private sector. So we were very sceptical about these procurement regulations, because procurement is part of the problem. And it doesn't put the workers first, it doesn't put the people that use the service first, it doesn't actually recognise that public service we all own as taxpayers, as individuals, as citizens of this country. So we do need to put into the public services how we all cooperate together, but the ownership doesn't need to be taken out of it. In terms of utilising the private sector, absolutely fantastic. I come from Sheffield, originally, live in London now, and the Cooperative Wholesale Society I grew up with, and I'm very proud of that heritage, of what my family shopping the Co-op did. But we need to be mindful that that cooperative movement needs to share the values of the trade union movement, and we need to come together and converge.
Thank you. Right, so on the accountancy companies and the Carillion issue, I think, time will tell when this is investigated in more detail. But we know that the Carillion model does not work, and I've said this numerous times, I don't think Carillion is going to be the first to collapse. And public opinion on this is very angry. People generally do not want to see this form of corporate governance. And as a Labour Party, we've said that, for example, with Carillion, we called for many of the services that were easy to bring back in-house to be brought back in-house straight away. And we wanted the government to examine the longer-term position on those that were more complicated. We also wanted the employees that were involved in Carillion's functions to be protected and to be transferred to the new organisations that were going to undertake their work. Now, in terms of, and this kind of goes into some of the comments that the gentleman at the back made about outsourcing. John Trickett, who's our Shadow Minister for the Cabinet Office, he's currently undertaking a review in relation to bringing things back in-house, what we can bring back in-house. And it's extremely complex, as you can imagine, because there are a number of different government departments that we need to look at. There are certain services that are very easy to bring back in-house on day one. There will be other services where we realise it might be a little bit more complicated. And I think we need to take a pragmatic view in relation to the co-op sector and their involvement in all of this. For example, if you have co-ops that are providing certain functions, I think that those functions need to be looked at. So one example that was given to me by Jonathan Ashworth, for example, was that, you know, he had a group of old ladies that were providing care in the community as a cooperative. Would we be saying that they couldn't exist anymore and that we would bring them in-house? Well, I think we'd need to address that and look at that situation in a little more detail. Now, in terms of Carillion's functions, as I say, there were two elements to what Carillion did. There were the services like providing cleaning for libraries, your general services that were quite simple to bring back in-house if local authorities wanted to do it. There was another element to their services which was in relation to the big infrastructure projects, HS2 and things like that. And with those organisations, it got me thinking as to how could we bring cooperatives into the mix here, when we're looking at how we would deal with Carillion. So one of the suggestions that we made in the first instance is that we'd get rid of Carillion, we wouldn't have Carillion, and if another Carillion collapsed, we would create a government project management organisation to carry out the functions of Carillion, so that government organisation would directly contract with all of the subcontractors so that they'd be paid on time, the employees would be protected, and that the project would take place. But then when I looked at the wider construction industry, I thought to myself, we're constantly relying on a number of kind of big players to deliver our infrastructure projects, when there are numerous smaller subcontractors out there, your chippies, your electricians, people like that, who are self-employed, who might on their own struggle to become part of a big project. So should we be looking at cooperatives to bring all of those independent contractors together, to give them the opportunity to collaborate and work on those big infrastructure projects? So it's certainly something that we're thinking about, but in terms of the longer term position, we are doing quite a detailed work now on what needs to be brought back in-house and when, how quickly that can happen, and where it's difficult to do so, what the Labour Party would do to make sure that people who worked in that sector were adequately protected and those business organisations are as equitable as they possibly can be. In terms of sustaining co-ops, I think that's a fantastic idea about the co-op university, and it leads into some of the comments that were made earlier about making sure that we educate councillors and even MPs and the wider public about the role of co-ops and what co-ops do. And we really do need to have a major marketing campaign, both in terms of making sure people get the business advice that they need so that they know that they have the opportunity to set up a co-op, but to make people across the UK aware of what co-ops do, that it's not just shops, it's not just small organisations. Co-ops can be major manufacturers, co-ops can be banks, co-ops can be anything you would like them to be. It's simply a case of making sure that those people who work in that organisation have a stake in that organisation, and we really need to get the message out there on that.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, Vivian Waddell from Mid-Counties Co-op, which owns Co-op Energy, and also from the Phone Co-op Foundation for Cooperative Innovation. I want to say, first of all, I really welcome Labour's commitment to co-ops. I think it's really positive, and I think you talked about improving the quality of life. That's not just about what we do when we're not working, it's also what we do when we are working and when we're participating in other things, and co-ops are a big part of that. I do want to say, and I want to ask about this, it's really important if the state gets involved in supporting co-ops, particularly in a very hands-on way, that we do it right, because there are examples where it didn't work. And I mean, the co-op, the so-called Ben co-ops of the 70s were really well-intentioned, but in the end they didn't work out. And we've heard about the possibility of renationalising some of the utilities into co-ops, and I'm not quite sure that we all understand what that means. And the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance Statement of Cooperative Identity, actually agreed here in Manchester in 1995, is absolutely clear that co-ops are autonomous organisations, neither controlled by private interests or by the state. So I'd like to just ask for your commitment that as you do this, and I welcome the concept, that you work with the co-op movement to ensure that what's done is really a genuine co-op and has the best chance of success, because we don't get these chances very often, and it's really important that we succeed.
Yeah, well, I completely agree, and you've got my pledge to do that. So heard it here first. Well, just to sum up then, I think it's been a fantastic discussion, and as I said at the start, you know, this is about making sure that people realise the benefits of really developing our cooperative movement, not just improving our quality of life, improving our productivity, because we know when we look at the statistics that those cooperatives have been extremely productive over time. We know across the world that productive workers and happy workers are generally found within cooperatives, and they're also generally in a trade union as well. And as a Labour Party, we are promoting that message, but it's about increasing our productivity and making sure that as a country we're doing well, we're generating more wealth, but that the wealth that we generate goes to the many and not the few. And as I said when I set out on my comments earlier on, please don't let this be the end of our discussions. If you've got any more comments and you think of something after today, you're like, oh, I really wish I'd asked this, then send me a quick email or pop down to my office in Salford and have a cup of coffee. And we'll even make sure we'll try and get biscuits in when you come as well, if you book in advance. Thanks very much. Thank you.